When Fred's book was published in 1845, that's 20 years before slavery was outlawed, the book had to come with a little note written by himself because nobody could believe an African American slave could have written a book. Notice the book was published in Boston. There's no way you could have a book like this published in the South. It had to be published in the North. Boston is so important to American literature in the early years. His real name was Frederick Bailey. He was born in 1818 in February, probably on Valentine's Day. That's information that Fred himself never had, but historians have done research and found the ledger where the new child's name was written. Fred's mother, Harriet Bailey, was a slave, and Fred was the property of the man who owned the mother. Fred never knew his mother well. Fred was raised by his grandmother. Fred, as a baby and a toddler, was raised by his grandmother in a cabin in the woods. Fred did not, of course, understand he was a slave. He finally reached an age when he was supposed to learn that he is a slave. So he was sent to live on this property to do small chores and gradually learn what it is to be a slave. This fine home was owned by Governor Edward Lloyd. That was not Fred's master, but Governor Lloyd was the employer of Fred's master. This man was extremely rich, but he was too busy to run his plantation. He hired Fred's master to run the plantation for him. When you're only 6 years old, you don't have the strength to be much good harvesting crops. Still, you can do small chores like rake leaves around the house and gradually learn what it is to be a slave. At this time, Fred witnessed the whipping of his Aunt Hester, by his master, a white man who was interested in Aunt Hester for physical reasons. Because Fred personally witnessed it, it has credibility in the book. But consider this conversation on page 11. Fred was not there, but he's putting quote marks around a conversation. Be skeptical when Fred does this kind of thing. Be sensitive to Fred's many strategies for arousing hatred for the institution of slavery. He knows his readers are people who live in the North, and they can't stand the idea that people in the South might be using four-letter words. Fred had called special attention to the foul language used by his master when he was whipping Aunt Hester. He left certain letters out because you could not print those words in America back then. And such language would surely arouse hatred for slavery among the people in the North reading Fred's book. People in the South won't have access to the book. People on the property recognized that Fred was unusually intelligent. It seemed a shame to send him out in the fields and make him work like other slaves. Why not send this intelligent boy to Baltimore to live in a fine middle-class home where he could be a kind of babysitter for a young boy called Tommy? That is how young Fred ends up in the Baltimore home of Sophia Auld, who famously teaches the boy how to read, not knowing that her husband would be upset at this notion. Here is the husband. Hugh Auld was married to Sophia Auld. They lived in Baltimore. They had a young child named Tommy. Why not let Fred come and be kind of a companion for young Tommy? And how was Hugh Auld connected with Fred? Hugh Auld was the brother of Captain Thomas Auld, who married into the family of Fred's master. Fred was in Baltimore when something important happened. His master died. That means the man's property was going to be split up among the children. Fred would have a new master. To whom would he be awarded among the three children? Fred was given to the daughter, which was a dream come true for him because she was kind. But she died within months of her father, so Fred really became the property of the daughter's husband. That is how Fred, at age 9, came to have a new owner. His name was Captain Thomas Auld, and his name appears often in the book.